Trust is a novel written by Hernandez. It claims to be a compilation of three separate works from three different authors, a claim that I trusted when I began reading the book. The first section appears to be about a mysterious antisocial billionaire named Benjamin Rask and his wife Helen Rask. The second section is an unfinished memoir about a man named Andrew Bevel who has suspiciously similar life to Benjamin Rask. And the third is a personal account by the memoir's editor and Andrew's assistant, which reveals the truth behind the other two stories. The first section of the novel Trust is called Bonds, which is a little story written by a person named Harold Vanner. In it, Vanner describes the life of one Benjamin Rask. He's this antisocial wealthy child who's orphaned at a young age, but inherits an incredible fortune. He grows up hating his family's tobacco business and instead uses his wealth to invest in the American stock market and earns a ton of fame on Wall Street. He very quickly becomes a legend because of his almost mythical ability to predict the future and just makes incredible amounts of money. Bonds also has a second focus, which talks about Benjamin's wife, who is Helen, who is just as brilliant as Benjamin, but struggled with mental health when she was younger. The novel journeys through her life with her famous but not very wealthy family, how they moved to America and Europe and back through the wars. Bonds describes the very strange marriage and antisocial behavior, eventually ending on Helen's declining mental state, insanity, and eventual death due to electroshock therapy. The second section of Trust is a memoir called My Life, written by someone named Andrew Bevel. He describes his own life, his childhood, his parents before their early death, his incredible skills in mathematics. Andrew writes about his many exploits in the American stock market and talks consistently about his amazing achievements. It really quickly becomes clear that Andrew is describing himself and is the figure that Benjamin is based off of, but his book is no less peculiar. He describes himself in a very self-flattering light, almost making all of his talents even cooler than they really are, and consistently making his achievements more impressive. He describes himself as a very altruistic person who cares about the American people and the public. He talks about his wife Mildred, who conveniently lived the same sort of life as Helen, but never suffered any mental illnesses, unlike what Harold Vanner wrote in Bonds. And the memoir is clearly unfinished. There are entire sections that are just empty or just notes for editor, and it gives a sense of falseness, like peeling paint for the memoir. It feels like you're seeing something that shouldn't be seen, and it's very clear that My Life is not even close to a legitimate or truthful story, but more of a self-flattering book. Third section of Bonds is a self-written account by a person named Ida Partenza. She's a poor girl in America, fathered by an anarchist Italian immigrant. Her childhood is very messy, but relatively stable, even though she is being influenced by her father's constant dogmas. As she attempts to secure a secretary job, Andrew Bevel hires her to write a memoir called My Life about himself. And years later, Ida discovers Mildred Bevel's journals, the real person Helen was based off of, and finally figures out the unfiltered truth about Andrew, Benjamin, Helen, and Mildred. The third section of Trust is completely different from the other two, as it talks about a fully different life of Ida and not about Andrew. It also allows, since we have to trust Ida because Andrew is definitely untrustworthy, and Harold Vanner didn't know enough, and his novel is basically a fictional. So this means that Ida basically gets to tell the true story behind everything in Trust, and really puts a human kind of side to Andrew Bevel's real story. This book's plot is incredible and its design is fantastic, so I'm not going to say too much more about the plot or else I'm going to spoil the entire thing. So let's go into the review. This book uses perspectives very nicely, and that's the main point about Trust. The first is a third-person account written by a different person from Benjamin and Andrew. The second is Andrew's own account, and the third is his assistant, Ida. And this makes it really interesting because they all see the same story very differently. Vanner portrays Benjamin Rask as this cold, aloof hero who saves the American market and was unjustly criticized, portrays Helen as this nice lady but kind of insane and had to reduce to horrible stuff later in her life. Andrew's own memoir is entirely self-flattering, just applauding himself again and again, reducing Mildred to this tiny little character. His wife just becomes basically a footstool for his own character in the book, and he describes his own achievements in the most detail. The third section is the most truthful because Ida Partenza chooses to know what to believe and reflects on her choices. She understands Andrew and Mildred's story better than any of them do and portrays them very accurately. This use of perspectives means you have to choose between who you want to trust and basically allows you to kind of understand the same story from multiple angles. I really like the design. For ideas, topics, and themes of trust, it really tries to cement the idea that perspective changes everything. Andrew Bevel's wealth allows him to bend reality to serve his own whims and his opinions. Andrew even says that he uses his wealth a lot of the time to hide things that he doesn't want to be shown or to change truths that are already in the world. Harold Vanner's account is considered kind of a threat to Bevel's public image, so Andrew tries to erase bonds from everyone's eyes. Ida learns firsthand from her family and then interacting with Bevel that what people choose to tell and what they choose to believe, it shows the motivations behind all of their actions. She uses her own skill as a writer to hide whatever Bevel wants, really. Mildred's role is particularly interesting as well because as the wife of Andrew, she had a more accurate account than anyone else, and she wrote her own journal. Her account at the end of the book, where Ida discovers her journal, basically allows them to finally find like the center of the perspective, what really happened, and why it really matters as well. Ida tries her best to find the perspective throughout the book. She's convinced that Andrew's hiding something, and the reader is encouraged to follow along and see what will happen. In the end, Trust is just a good novel. It's excellent. It plays around perspectives really well, and I recommend to anyone who wants to delve deep into a book and learn about a mystery. It really challenges your thinking. You can't read this while sleepy. You're going to have to fully understand and invest into the story, but I think it's well worth it, and it demonstrates a really incredible truth by the end.